everyone. Welcome to my presentation and analysis of the arrests that occurred in New York City. My name is Jamie James, and today I will be presenting some charts that I created using data that I got from nycopendata.com. Now, just to give you a little backstory of the data, NYC Open Data lists every arrest in New York City dating all the way back to 2006 through the end of 2017. Each record in this dataset represents an arrest that occurred in New York City by the NYPD and includes information about the offense description, which borough and jurisdiction the crime occurred in, and the year the arrest took place. This dataset also includes information of the demographic of the suspects, such as age group, race, and gender. According to data.gov, this data is manually extracted every quarter and reviewed by the Office of Management Analysis and Planning before being posted on the NYPD website. This data is relevant because it can be used by the public to get a better understanding of the nature of police enforcement activity. Now, as you can see, this dataset is very, very large. I don't want to scroll all the way down, but it has over 1 million records in here. Now, this is where Excel comes to play. Excel is such a powerful tool because it can take datasets that are as large as this one and make it come to life. Massive datasets often pose problems because it is hard for users to really conceptualize and see the bigger picture of what the data is trying to convey. Pivot tables are extremely useful in that it takes large amounts of data and summarizes it by sorting, reorganizing, and grouping it all by just a click of a button. With the advancement of technology, the amount of data we are able to capture is only increasing, so pivot tables come very useful. Data that used to take hours to sort now takes seconds to do thanks to pivot tables. Pivot charts are also helpful in that it helps users visualize the data in a simpler way. For this project, I decided to break the data down into categories in order to understand the data more. Grouping the data into gender, race, type of crime, and borough really helps us not only comprehend the data better, but also introduces us to interesting findings. Now, I wanted to take some time to go into how I created all of these charts. So starting with the arrests by gender chart, if we go into the gender tab, we can see the pivot table that I created. In rows, I put in the gender, and for columns, I put in the age group, which helps us visualize. It helps us visualize just how many people in each age group for the gender, how many people got arrested. Now, with the slicer that I created, you can see the difference between females and males. Now, it looks like they're about the same, but if you noticed, the axis also changed when I switched from male to female. So if we do that again, for male, the highest is 450,000, and for females, the highest is 90,000. So even though it looks like they're about the same, males got arrested way more than females. And the highest age group was 25 to 44. Now moving on to the next chart, arrests by gender. If we go into the race tab, you can see that for rows, I put the perpetrator race, and for the values, I put the count of arrests. So we can see how many arrests each race had. Now, I thought a pie chart would be best to convey this information because you can really see the difference between each races. Moving on to the next chart, arrest by borough. For this chart, I wanted to see which borough had the highest crime rate and for each years. So if we go into the borough tab, it shows exactly that. For the rows, I put arrest borough, and for the columns, I separated it by year, so it would be easier to see rather than by quarter. And for the last chart, I wanted to separate the crimes by the type of crime. So the way I did that was If we go into the crime tab, for the rows, I put the offense description, and for the columns, I put the age group. Now, there was a lot of, if we could see, there were a lot of offense descriptions, and so the graph just became really messy and when I showed every single offense description. So to make it easier for the eye, I filtered it by the top 10. If you go into the little drop down here and go to value filters and click top 10, you can see the top 10 arrests for each age group. Now, while creating these charts, there were some interesting findings that I found that I thought were worth highlighting. Now, in the arrests by borough chart, we can see that Manhattan has the most crimes for almost all age groups, which makes sense as it is the most densely populated borough. But what was interesting was that for almost all boroughs, 2015 had the highest crime rate and 2014 had the lowest crime rate. Now, as you can see, there was a huge spike for each borough from 2014 and 2015. It would be worth looking into why the crime rate spiked up so much between 2014 and 2015, because clearly this crime rate increased exponentially within the year. Another finding that I thought was worth mentioning is depicted in the top 10 crimes by age chart. If I just scroll down, you can see it. Now, the slicer that I created for this is by age group, and you can see that the top 10 crimes changes for each age group. For example, robbery is the highest committed crime for the age group under 18, whereas for 18 to 24, the highest committed crime is by dangerous drugs. So, and the same thing for 25 to 44 and everything else. Dangerous drugs is just keeps coming as the most committed crime. Also, the top 10 crimes varied for each age group. So for 18, again, robbery was included as the top 10 crimes. But so as you can see, the top 10 crimes varied for each age group. For example, vehicle and traffic laws is part of the top 10 crimes that were committed for the age group 18 to 24, whereas for the age group under 18, vehicles and traffic laws obviously aren't part of the crimes because, they're not old enough to drive. So I just think it just makes it easier to visualize the data and makes it a little bit more interactive with the slicers. In conclusion, pivot tables and pivot charts are very useful in helping users understand data, especially when data sets are as large as this one. Now, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I will be glad to discuss with you some of my findings.